The galaxy believed a queen needed an army to survive, but she was saved by a human soldier who did not even know her name. He had no power, no ambition, and nothing to gain. Yet his simple choice to rescue a stranger would expose a hidden betrayal, challenge an ancient empire, and change the future of two civilizations forever. Welcome to Gravity and Stardust. We hope you enjoy this story and have a wonderful day filled with happiness. Now, let us begin this unforgettable journey among the stars. The rescue order contained 3 instructions. Reach the coordinates. Confirm survivors. Return before the debris field became impossible to navigate. Sergeant Ethan Walker had followed orders like these for 12 years. Simple words. Clean decisions. No room for hesitation. But space had a way of turning simple decisions into something heavier. At 0217 hours, a damaged vessel appeared on his patrol scanner. Unknown Ilorian design. Severe structural failure. No active response signal. Estimated survival probability, decreasing every minute. Command wants confirmation, the pilot said through the communication channel. We have less than 10 minutes before the radiation cloud shifts. Ethan stared at the alien ship drifting silently ahead. Tell them we found the vessel. A pause followed. And survivors? Ethan looked at the fading life signs on his display. There were 2 possibilities. Follow procedure and wait for a specialized rescue team. Or enter a damaged alien ship alone and risk becoming another casualty. He remembered the last time he had faced that choice. The memory arrived without warning. A lunar colony evacuation. A damaged transport. A decision made by the numbers. The mission report had called it a success. Most civilians survived. The evacuation corridor remained open. The operation was marked acceptable. But Ethan remembered the one name that appeared under the losses. Daniel Reeves. His teammate. His friend. The man who stayed behind because someone had to hold the emergency route open. Ethan had followed the calculation. The system had called it necessary. But every night afterward, he wondered if necessary was just another word people used when they did not want to carry the weight themselves. Sergeant, the pilot asked again. Ethan closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he reached for his helmet. I'm going in. The pilot did not argue. He knew Ethan well enough. This was not recklessness. It was something harder to explain. A personal rule written after a failure he could never undo. The alien vessel was unlike anything Ethan had seen. Smooth silver surfaces curved through the damaged corridors, built with technology that seemed less mechanical and more organic. Even broken, the ship carried a strange elegance. Emergency lights reflected across unfamiliar symbols carved into the walls. Ethan moved carefully, checking oxygen levels, structural stability, and possible hazards. He was not searching for a valuable target. He was searching for a living person. That difference mattered. The command chamber was almost destroyed. A section of the ceiling had collapsed. Broken consoles flickered with weak energy. Then his scanner found a biological signal. 1. Alive. Ethan moved through the debris and found her beside the damaged command platform. At first, he noticed the injuries. Then the details that proved she was not human. Her skin carried a soft pastel purple tone beneath the emergency lighting. Long, thin pointed ears extended from beneath her dark hair, unlike any human feature. Her face carried familiar proportions, yet subtle differences made it impossible to mistake her for Earthborn. She looked almost familiar. Almost. But not enough to belong to his world. Her clothing was damaged but clearly important, decorated with symbols Ethan could not understand. A small insignia rested near her shoulder. He ignored it. Rank did not matter inside a failing ship. Life did. Can you hear me? Ethan asked. No answer. He checked her breathing and medical readings. Severe dehydration. Internal stress. But stable. Alive. He removed his own emergency thermal layer and wrapped it around her before securing the extraction harness. The ship suddenly trembled. Warning alarms filled the chamber. The countdown on his helmet changed from minutes to seconds. Ethan lifted her carefully and moved toward the exit. As they reached the damaged corridor, her eyes opened. Silver-violet eyes looked at him through the flashing red lights. Confusion appeared first, then suspicion. Who are you? She whispered. Ethan adjusted his grip as the corridor shook around them. Someone getting you out of here. Her expression changed slightly. She studied his uniform, his equipment, his face. You do not know who I am. Ethan looked toward the collapsing passage ahead. No, The answer seemed to surprise her. Not because he lacked information, because he did not care about it. Moments later, the human rescue vessel pulled away from the destroyed alien ship. Ethan watched the debris disappear behind them. He still did not know the woman's name. He did not know her position. He did not know that saving her would place him between two civilizations, challenge an empire, and rewrite the future of worlds beyond Earth. He only knew one thing. Someone was alive. And this time, he had not walked away. Serafina Vale woke up expecting pain. She expected the cold silence of a damaged royal vessel. She expected the familiar voices of her guards, her advisors, or the medical systems of Eloria reporting her condition. Instead, she heard a human voice. Calm, unhurried, almost annoyingly ordinary. Your oxygen levels are stable now. Don't move too quickly. Her eyes opened slowly. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar. The design was functional rather than elegant. Exposed panels, visible wiring, no royal symbols, no indication that anyone inside this vessel knew who she was. For several seconds, she simply watched. Across the small medical compartment, the human soldier who had carried her from the destroyed ship was repairing a damaged communication unit. He was not looking at her. He was not waiting for gratitude. He was not behaving like someone who had just rescued a member of the Elorian royal family. That bothered her. Where am I? She asked. Ethan Walker looked up immediately. A human rescue vessel. We're moving toward a neutral station. His answer was direct. No hesitation. No unnecessary respect. Serafina studied his face carefully. Humans were often described in Elorian intelligence reports as emotional, aggressive, and difficult to predict. Ethan did not match those descriptions. He was controlled, focused, almost too disciplined. You entered my ship alone, she said. Ethan returned his attention to the communication device. Yes. That was dangerous. Yes. The simplicity of the answer caught her off guard. Most people would explain themselves. They would defend their decision. They would try to prove courage. Ethan simply acknowledged the fact. Why? She asked. His hand stopped moving for a moment. A tiny pause. Almost invisible. But Serafina noticed. Because someone was alive. The answer should have been meaningless. It should have sounded like a basic duty. Yet something in his voice suggested it was not. It was a rule he carried. One that had cost him something before. Serafina had spent years studying diplomats and commanders. She knew the difference between confidence and armor. Ethan was wearing armor. Not physical. Emotional. You knew my vessel was Elorian, she said. Yes. You knew there could be political consequences. Yes. And you still entered. Ethan finally looked at her. The consequences came after the person. That sentence stayed with her. Not because it was profound, because it sounded practiced. Like something he had repeated to himself many times. Later, after medical scans confirmed she could travel, Serafina observed the human vessel more closely. It was smaller than most Elorian rescue craft, less advanced in certain areas. But every system had been repaired, maintained, and adapted by someone who understood that technology only mattered if it served the people depending on it. Ethan checked every reading twice. He inspected damaged components instead of replacing them immediately. Your equipment is outdated, she said while watching him repair a sensor module. Ethan glanced at the device. It works. You have access to better technology. Better doesn't always mean necessary. She almost disagreed. Almost. Elorian civilization had spent centuries improving efficiency. Their systems were designed to reduce uncertainty, to remove mistakes, to prevent failures before they happened. But this human seemed comfortable working with imperfect things. Not because he accepted failure. Because he believed broken things could still have value. You are different from the reports, she said. Ethan looked at her. That usually means the reports were incomplete. A faint silence followed. Serafina almost smiled. Almost. Then the ship's communication system activated. A priority signal appeared on the main display. Elorian encryption. Her heart changed before her expression did. Someone was searching for her. Someone knew she survived. Ethan noticed the change immediately. Bad news? He asked. She looked at the message without opening it. For the first time since waking, uncertainty appeared on her face. Possibly. Ethan did not ask for details. He did not demand an explanation. He simply adjusted the navigation controls. Then we should be careful. Serafina looked at him. You are not curious? Ethan glanced back. I am. But you won't ask? He shook his head. If you want me to know, you'll tell me. The answer surprised her more than any question could have, because trust was rare in her world. Information was power. Secrets were protection. Yet this human soldier, who had every reason to demand answers, was giving her something unfamiliar. Space to choose. Hours later, when the vessel entered the neutral corridor, Serafina finally activated the communication. The response came instantly. Her identity was confirmed. Her advisors, her empire, her people, they were all waiting. The human soldier beside her still did not know everything. He did not know the weight of the crown she carried. He did not know the conflicts waiting beyond the transmission. But Serafina knew one thing. The first person who saved her life had been the one person who asked for nothing in return. And somehow, that was the most difficult thing for a queen to understand. The truth arrived quietly. It did not come with alarms, military warnings, or a dramatic announcement. It came through a single transmission code that changed the atmosphere inside the human rescue vessel before anyone spoke a word. The encryption belonged to the Elorian Royal Command. Serafina Vale stared at the message waiting on the display. She had delayed opening it because she already knew what it meant. Her survival was no longer a private matter. Somewhere across the stars, an entire empire was searching for its missing queen. Ethan Walker noticed the change in her expression. He did not ask immediately. He had learned enough about her in a short time to recognize when silence meant something. "You should probably answer it," he said. Serafina looked at him. "You are not concerned about what happens after?" Ethan glanced toward the navigation display. "I'm concerned. I just don't think worrying helps." It was another simple answer. Another human habit she did not fully understand. In Elorian society, concern was usually expressed through preparation, analysis, and control. Emotions were measured because uncontrolled emotions could influence decisions. Ethan seemed to operate differently. He acknowledged uncertainty and continued anyway. Serafina activated the transmission. The holographic image of her advisors appeared in the small communication chamber. Their relief was immediate. Their voices became formal seconds later. "Your Majesty, your location has been confirmed. We will arrange immediate extraction." Serafina listened carefully. The words were respectful. The concern sounded genuine. But something felt wrong. Not in what they said. In what they avoided saying. No questions about the attack. No questions about the damaged vessel. No questions about who had rescued her. Only instructions. Only procedures. "How long has the search been active?" Serafina asked. One advisor hesitated. "Since communication was lost." "And how many rescue teams were deployed?" Another pause. "Your Majesty, the situation required caution." Ethan stood silently behind her. He noticed the hesitation too. Serafina ended the transmission after receiving the coordinates for the nearest neutral station. She remained still for several seconds. "They are hiding something," she said. Ethan did not immediately agree. "Maybe." She looked at him. "You think I'm wrong?" "No," he adjusted the damaged sensor module on the table. "I think we don't know enough yet." The answer frustrated her slightly. Not because it was incorrect, because it was reasonable. She was used to decisions being made with incomplete information, but usually she was the one controlling the uncertainty. Now she was the person waiting for answers. At the neutral station, the difference between them became even clearer. Elorian officials arrived within hours. The moment they entered, the room changed. People stood straighter. Conversations became quieter. The woman Ethan had carried from a damaged ship was suddenly surrounded by the invisible weight of a crown. Ethan watched from a distance as Serafina transformed. Her posture changed. Her voice became more formal. Every movement carried authority. He finally understood something. The queen had not been pretending to be powerful. She had been carrying power because everyone expected her to. Later, she found him repairing the same communication device he had been working on earlier. "You are avoiding the attention," she said. Ethan looked up. "I'm avoiding becoming part of a situation I don't understand. You saved me. I rescued a person." The correction was immediate. Serafina studied him. "Do you always separate the person from their position?" Ethan looked at the device in his hands. "I try." "Why?" He was quiet for a moment. Then the answer came. "Because positions don't bleed. People do." The sentence was not dramatic. He did not say it like a speech. He simply stated something he believed. Serafina remembered that. The next day, official reports arrived. The attack on her vessel had been classified as a navigational accident. The explanation was technically possible. The damage could have resulted from a system failure. But Ethan reviewed the data with a different perspective. He noticed the pattern. The communication systems failed first, then the navigation, then the emergency beacon. Someone wanted the ship unable to call for help, he said. The analysts dismissed the possibility. The damage is consistent with a cascade failure. Ethan pointed at the projection. A natural failure would spread randomly. This happened in sequence. Serafina looked at the information. She did not know if he was right, but she knew something important. He was not searching for enemies. He was searching for answers. The investigation had officially begun, and for the first time in years, Queen Serafina Vale faced a possibility more dangerous than an attack from outside her empire. The threat might have been waiting inside it all along. The journey to the outer colonies revealed something the official reports had carefully avoided. Illyria was not collapsing. It was surviving. And sometimes, that difference was the most dangerous truth of all. Vera Station appeared ordinary from orbit. Its atmosphere processors functioned. Its supply routes remained active. Its population numbers matched expectations. According to every official document, the colony was stable. But when Ethan Walker stepped onto the station's metal platforms, he noticed what numbers could not show. The sound of old machinery working harder than it was designed to. The maintenance crews replacing parts that should have been upgraded years ago. The workers who adjusted their entire lives around problems nobody had bothered to record. Serafina Vale walked beside him, surrounded by advisors who immediately began explaining the station's performance indicators. Production remains within acceptable levels, one official said. Resource efficiency is above projected minimums. Ethan looked across the corridor where a technician was manually recalibrating an aging environmental regulator. How long has that unit been failing? He asked. The technician looked surprised that anyone noticed. It is not failing, sir. It just requires adjustment every few days. Ethan nodded slowly. That sounds like a system that's failing politely. The advisor frowned. Serafina did not. She watched the technician continue working. For the first time, she saw the difference between a functioning system and a healthy one. Illyria had measured survival. It had forgotten to measure exhaustion. Later, she reviewed the colony records herself. The information was accurate. That was the uncomfortable part. Nobody had lied. The reports simply measured what they were designed to measure. They recorded output. They did not record frustration. They recorded repairs. They did not record the people performing them. Your reports were not wrong, Ethan said while examining a damaged navigation module. Serafina looked at him, but they were incomplete. She finished the sentence before he could. Ethan nodded. That happens often. She looked at him carefully. On Earth. A quiet pause followed. Ethan continued repairing the module. Everywhere. He did not explain further, but she understood there was a story behind the answer. A story he carried but rarely opened. The investigation continued through the colony network. The pattern became clearer. Illyrian systems were not outdated because the Empire lacked intelligence. They were outdated because every previous generation had optimized them for stability. Every improvement had been designed to preserve what already existed. No one had planned for a universe that changed faster than expected. The same philosophy appeared in their security systems, their communication networks, their political structures. Protect what works. Prevent disruption. Avoid uncertainty. It had once been the reason Illyria survived. Now it was becoming the reason Illyria struggled to adapt. In the evening, Serafina found Ethan standing near the observation deck. Below them, the colony lights reflected against the planet's surface. You think my empire is broken, she said. Ethan shook his head. No, then what do you think? He watched the distant lights. I think it was built by people who were trying to solve real problems. Serafina waited. And now? Ethan looked at the old station structures around them. Now the problems changed. The answer stayed with her. Because that was the difficulty of leadership. The solutions that saved one generation could become obstacles for the next. A new discovery appeared the following morning. Ethan noticed that the communication failure before her ship's destruction was connected to an old security protocol. The system had not malfunctioned. It had followed its original design. When communication patterns became unusual, it automatically isolated the vessel. The protocol had been created decades earlier to protect royal ships from interception. But someone had activated it manually during the attack. Someone with high-level access. Serafina stared at the evidence. So the system was not broken. Ethan shook his head. No, he looked at the data. Someone used something reliable for the wrong purpose. That distinction changed everything. The threat was no longer an accident. It was intention. Yet Serafina did not immediately think of enemies. She thought of responsibility. Someone inside her empire had taken a system designed to protect her and turned it against her. "You are angry," Ethan said quietly. She looked at him. "Yes." A pause. "But anger will not tell me why." Ethan noticed the change. Months earlier, she would have searched for the person to blame. Now she searched for the reason behind the action. It was a small difference. But small differences were where civilizations changed. The investigation had begun as a search for whoever attacked a queen. Now it had become something much larger. They were uncovering the weakness of an entire empire. And somewhere within that empire, someone believed that control was the only way to save it. The evidence from Vera Station changed the direction of the investigation. The attack on Serafina Vale was no longer an isolated incident. It was connected to something deeper. Something built into the foundation of Elorian civilization itself. But discovering the flaw was easier than deciding what to do about it. The first official response came from the Imperial Security Council. They gathered through a secure holographic chamber, their faces appearing above the central table while thousands of miles of distance separated them. Their solution was immediate. Increase surveillance. Restrict access to critical systems. Expand royal authority until the internal threat was identified. From a purely strategic perspective, it made sense. Ethan Walker understood why experienced leaders reached that conclusion. When a system failed, the instinct was to add more protection, more barriers, more control. But he also recognized the danger. Sometimes the same walls built to keep enemies outside eventually trapped everyone inside. "The Empire cannot afford uncertainty," one council member stated. Serafina remained silent for several seconds. She looked at the proposed security changes displayed before her. Every recommendation was designed to prevent another attack. Every recommendation also gave fewer people the ability to question decisions. "How long would these measures remain active?" she asked. The council member answered carefully. "Until stability returns." Ethan noticed the phrase. Serafina noticed it too. Stability. A word that sounded safe. A word that could mean almost anything. "And who decides when stability has returned?" she asked. No one answered immediately. The silence was enough. After the meeting, Serafina returned to the investigation room alone. Ethan found her studying historical records from previous centuries of Elorian leadership. Wars avoided. Crises survived. Systems created. "You disagree with them," Ethan said. She did not look away from the archive. "I understand them." Ethan stepped closer. "That's not the same thing." "No." Her fingers moved through old records. "But it matters." She showed him an ancient emergency protocol created after a devastating conflict thousands of years earlier. Eloria had nearly collapsed because leaders hesitated while enemies moved faster. The solution had been simple. Centralize decisions. Reduce delays. Prevent mistakes. For centuries, it worked. It saved lives. It built the empire they knew today. "They were not wrong," Serafina said quietly. Ethan nodded. No, he looked at the old system designs. They just solved yesterday's problem. That answer stayed with her. Because it was the same problem every civilization faced. The future arrived while everyone was still protecting the past. Later that day, Ethan discovered another detail hidden inside the security data. The protocol that isolated Serafina's ship had not been activated from a random military station. It had been triggered through an authorized command channel. Someone had used legitimate access. Someone who knew exactly how Elorian protection systems worked. The list of possible users narrowed quickly. High-ranking officials, military leadership, members of the Royal Advisory Circle. Serafina watched the names appear one by one. She expected anger. Ethan expected anger too. Instead, he saw something else. Disappointment. "You suspected this was possible," he said. She looked at the names. Every leader knows betrayal is possible. But a long pause followed. Knowing something can happen is different from believing someone you trusted would do it. Ethan understood that answer. He had felt the same thing before. Not with a kingdom. Not with an empire. With a person he considered family. The kind of loss that did not come from an enemy's attack. The kind that came from realizing someone you depended on had made a choice you could never understand. "You still believe they had a reason," Ethan said. Serafina looked at him. "A reason does not make an action acceptable." A quiet moment passed. "But if I do not understand the reason, I will only remove one person. I will not fix the problem. Ethan looked at her differently after that. She was not searching for someone to punish. She was searching for something that could prevent the next failure. The investigation continued. The evidence pointed closer to the center of power. And with every new discovery, the same question returned. Who had betrayed the queen? But another question became even more important. Why did someone inside Eloria believe betrayal was the only way to save it? The name appeared in the investigation file 3 days later. Lord Cashenvare, former Supreme Military Advisor, strategic architect behind some of Eloria's greatest defensive victories, a man whose decisions had protected billions of lives across generations. The same man now connected to the security breach that nearly erased his own queen. Serafina stared at the information without speaking. The room remained quiet except for the low hum of the station's environmental systems. Ethan Walker watched her carefully. He expected anger. He expected disbelief. Instead, he saw something far more complicated. Recognition. You know him, Ethan said. Serafina did not look away from the display. Everyone in the royal court knows Cashen. Her voice became quieter. He was there before I became queen. The information changed the situation immediately. This was not an enemy hiding beyond the borders. This was someone who understood Eloria better than most people alive. Someone who knew its weaknesses because he had spent decades protecting it. Ethan reviewed the evidence again. Why would someone like him do this? Serafina walked toward the window overlooking the station. Because people rarely destroy what they hate. She paused. Sometimes they damage what they love because they believe they are saving it. Ethan understood the meaning behind the words. He had seen versions of the same thing before. People making impossible choices. People convincing themselves that one sacrifice was acceptable if it prevented a larger loss. That was how systems justified decisions. That was how individuals carried regrets. The investigation into Cashen revealed the truth. He had not attempted to assassinate Serafina. He had created a controlled isolation event. He wanted the queen removed from communication long enough for the military council to assume emergency authority. His plan was not to destroy the empire. It was to freeze it. Under Cashen's leadership, Eloria would become more centralized, more secure, less vulnerable to outside threats, but also less capable of changing. He believes he is protecting his civilization, Ethan said. Serafina looked at the security records. Yes. And you disagree? Yes. A pause. But understanding why he did it is necessary. Ethan looked at her. Most people would just call him a traitor. Serafina turned toward him. That would be easier. Her expression remained calm. But easy answers rarely repaired difficult problems. The confrontation happened in the old command chamber beneath the Imperial complex. Cashen did not flee. He arrived wearing the same uniform he had worn for decades. No weapons. No dramatic defense. Just an older man standing inside the room where he had advised multiple rulers. You finally understand, Cashen said when Serafina entered. She stopped several feet away. I understand that you used the systems meant to protect me against me. Cashen accepted the statement. Because those systems were created to protect Eloria. By removing my ability to choose. By preventing you from making decisions that could destroy everything we built. The words were not spoken with hatred. They were spoken with fear. That was what made them dangerous. Cashen genuinely believed history had placed him in this position. You think uncertainty is weakness, Serafina said. Because you have seen what uncertainty costs. Cashen's expression changed slightly. I have watched colonies disappear because leaders hesitated. I have watched negotiations fail because people trusted too easily. Stability is not a luxury, Your Majesty. It is survival. Serafina stepped closer. And what happens when stability becomes the reason we cannot survive the future? Silence filled the chamber. Ethan remained outside the discussion. This was not his empire. Not his decision. He understood that some battles could only be fought by the people who inherited them. But he noticed something important. Serafina was no longer trying to prove she was stronger than Cashen. She was trying to understand the fear that created him. The final decision was not revenge. Cashen was removed from command and placed under formal investigation. His actions had consequences. But Serafina refused to erase his entire legacy. Some advisors called it mercy. Others called it weakness. Ethan saw something different. Discipline without hatred. Justice without losing compassion. Later that night, Serafina stood beside the same old command chamber window. You think I made the right choice? She asked. Ethan looked at the stars outside. I think you made the harder choice. She turned toward him. And that matters? Ethan nodded. Usually, the easy choice is the one that proves you were right. The hard choice is the one that proves what kind of person you are. For a long moment, neither spoke. The betrayal had been uncovered. The threat had been identified. But the real challenge remained. Illyria did not need a new enemy. It needed a new understanding of itself. And Seraphina knew the future of her empire would not be decided by defeating one man. It would be decided by whether billions of people were willing to change with her. The days after Cashin Vare's removal were not filled with celebration. They were filled with questions. Seraphina Vale had expected resistance from those who supported Cashin. She had expected political arguments, public criticism, and uncertainty. What she did not expect was how difficult it would be to convince her own people that change did not mean destruction. Across Illyria, citizens debated the future of their empire. Some believed Cashin had betrayed everything they valued. Others believed he had only made the mistake of protecting those values too aggressively. The division was not between loyalty and betrayal. It was between two different ideas of survival. Seraphina understood that because, in some ways, she had once believed the same things Cashin believed. A ruler carried responsibility. A ruler prevented chaos. A ruler protected the system at any cost. But the investigation had forced her to confront an uncomfortable truth. A system could survive for centuries and still be unprepared for tomorrow. Ethan Walker noticed the change in her before anyone else did. The queen who once searched every report for certainty had started asking different questions. Not who is responsible, but why did this happen? Not how do we prevent this again, but what created the conditions for it? They walked together through the reconstruction district of the Imperial complex. Human engineers worked beside Illyrian technicians, combining unfamiliar methods. Some argued over designs. Some disagreed over procedures. But they kept working. Your people seem uncomfortable with disagreement, Ethan said. Seraphina looked toward the workers. Illyria was built on the belief that conflict creates weakness. And now, she watched two engineers finally solve a problem they could not have solved separately. Now I think avoiding disagreement creates a different kind of weakness. Ethan nodded quietly. He understood that lesson more than most. He had spent years believing every failure was something he personally needed to prevent. Every mistake was something he had to carry. Seraphina had noticed that long before he admitted it. You still blame yourself for the lunar evacuation, she said. Ethan stopped walking. The statement was not a question. For a moment, the noise of the construction area seemed distant. You investigated me? He asked. No, she looked at him. I observed you. Ethan looked away. There is a difference? Yes. Her voice softened. Investigation searches for evidence. Observation searches for understanding. The answer surprised him, because it sounded like something he would have said. You think I carry too much, Ethan said. Seraphina considered the words. I think you confuse responsibility with ownership. He looked back at her. What's the difference? Responsibility means you do what you can. She paused. Ownership means you believe every outcome belongs to you. Ethan had no immediate answer, because somewhere deep inside, he knew she was right. He had spent years trying to repair a moment that could never be repaired. He wanted to save everyone because he could not accept that some losses were beyond one person's control. Seraphina had spent years doing something similar from the opposite direction. She believed a queen could not need anyone. They had both built walls around themselves for different reasons. The difference was that now they were beginning to see the walls. The alliance between Earth and Illyria progressed slowly. There were no instant friendships between civilizations. No sudden disappearance of suspicion. Trade agreements required negotiation. Scientific exchanges required patience. Cultural differences created misunderstandings. But the process itself proved something important. Cooperation did not require two sides to become identical. It required them to remain different and still choose to work together. When the council later proposed a formal alliance ceremony, many expected Seraphina to make a political decision. They expected strategy. They expected calculation. Instead, she surprised them. She asked for time. Ethan found her afterward in the old observation chamber. You're thinking about the alliance, he said. She looked toward the stars. I'm thinking about the person everyone expects me to become because of it. Ethan understood immediately. A queen. A symbol. a connection between worlds. But beneath all those expectations was still the woman he had carried from a damaged ship. "What do you want?" he asked. Serafina looked at him. Years earlier, she might have answered with duty, with obligation, with what the Empire required. This time, she searched for something else. "I want a future I chose." Ethan nodded. No promise, no pressure, just understanding. And that was the moment Serafina realized the greatest change had already happened. She was no longer trying to protect an empire by controlling everything around her. She was learning to trust others enough to build something together. The galaxy had expected a queen to prove her strength through power. Instead, she proved it through something far more difficult: the courage to choose differently. The proposal arrived 3 weeks after the investigation ended. It was presented as a political necessity. A formal alliance between Earth and Eloria would require a symbol powerful enough to convince two civilizations that had spent generations separated by distance and suspicion. The Imperial Council had many suggestions: shared technology agreements, joint exploration programs, military cooperation. But one idea received the most attention: a union between Queen Serafina Vale and Sergeant Ethan Walker. The room became silent when the suggestion appeared. Everyone understood the meaning. The Elorian queen and the human soldier who saved her life would become the living connection between two worlds. From a political perspective, it was perfect. From a personal perspective, it was complicated. Serafina rejected the proposal immediately. "I will not turn a person into a symbol," she said. The council members remained respectful, but their disappointment was obvious. They believed they were offering a solution. She saw something different: a way for everyone else to avoid the harder work of building trust. Later that evening, Ethan found her in the observation chamber overlooking the planet below. The city lights of Eloria reflected across the glass, thousands of settlements connected by a civilization older than Earth's recorded history. "They asked you to marry me," Ethan said. Serafina looked at him. "You already know?" "The entire station knows." A small silence followed. "That was fast." Ethan almost smiled. Almost. Politics usually travels faster than people. She returned her attention to the stars. "You should refuse." Ethan did not hesitate. "Yes." Her expression changed slightly. "You are not even going to ask why I brought it up?" "No," he looked at her. "Because if you are considering it, it should not be because you think I expect something." The answer caught her off guard. Most people would see this as an opportunity. Ethan nodded. "Most people are not wrong." She studied him carefully. "And you?" He looked down at his hands. The same hands that had repaired damaged equipment. The same hands that had carried her from a collapsing ship. "I spent most of my life following orders. Some were right. Some were necessary. Some were decisions I still think about." He paused. "I do not want another person making a decision this important because they feel they owe me something." Serafina remained quiet, because that was the difference between Ethan and everyone else around her. Everyone saw what he represented: a connection, a soldier, a symbol of humanity. Ethan still saw himself as one person making one choice at a time. Over the following weeks, the alliance negotiations continued without using their relationship as a shortcut. Earth officials questioned whether the arrangement gave Eloria too much influence. Elorian traditionalists questioned whether a human could stand beside their queen. Neither side received easy answers. Serafina insisted on that. "If this alliance cannot survive honest disagreement," she told the council, "then it was never an alliance. It was only an illusion." Ethan watched her handle every challenge differently than before. The queen he met on the damaged vessel would have searched for the perfect response. The woman standing before the galaxy now accepted that leadership meant making choices without guarantees. One evening, she asked him a question she had avoided for months. "When you rescued me, if you had known who I was, would you still have entered the ship?" Ethan looked at her for a long moment. He knew the question mattered. Not politically, personally. "I don't know." The honesty surprised her. "You don't?" "No." He looked toward the stars. Knowing someone is powerful changes the situation. It creates expectations. A pause. "But I hope I would have remembered the important part." "Which is?" Ethan looked back at her. "You were still someone who needed help." That answer remained with her. Not because it was romantic, because it was the same reason she had trusted him from the beginning. He had never loved the crown. He had never chased the title. He had never wanted the power attached to her name. He had seen the person before the position. When Seraphina finally returned to the council, she did not announce a political arrangement. She announced a personal choice. "I will not marry a human soldier because the Empire needs a symbol," she said. "I will not marry him because history expects it." The chamber waited. "I will choose him because before he knew my title, before he knew my influence, before he knew what I could offer him, he chose to save my life." No one spoke. The decision was not an ending. It was a beginning. Two civilizations would still struggle. Two cultures would still misunderstand each other. But the foundation was different now. Not obligation. Not strategy. Choice. And that was something neither empire nor history could command. It had to be given freely. Years later, historians would debate the exact moment humanity changed the course of interstellar history. Some pointed to the alliance between Earth and Eloria. Others pointed to the reforms that transformed an ancient empire from a system built on control into one built on cooperation. But those who lived through that era remembered something much smaller. They remembered a damaged alien vessel, a human soldier stepping into danger without knowing who he was saving, and a queen discovering that the greatest strength of a civilization was not its ability to avoid failure. It was its willingness to learn from it. Eloria did not become perfect after Seraphina Vale's decision. That was never the promise. The Empire still faced disagreements, political resistance, and the difficult process of changing traditions built over thousands of years. But something fundamental had shifted. Leaders began listening to the people maintaining the systems they controlled. Colonies gained a stronger voice in decisions that affected their future. Old security protocols were replaced with adaptive systems designed not only to prevent disasters, but to understand changing circumstances. It was slower. It was more complicated. It created more arguments. Seraphina accepted all of it, because she had learned that a quiet system was not always a healthy one. Sometimes silence only meant people had stopped believing their voices mattered. The old royal chamber remained untouched. The same ancient walls surrounded the throne. The same symbols represented generations of Elorian history. But the meaning had changed. The throne was no longer a place where one person carried every decision alone. It became a place where difficult questions were allowed to exist. Ethan Walker never became what people expected him to become. He never sought political power. He never attempted to reshape Eloria in humanity's image. When offered official positions within the Alliance Council, he declined. Many people struggled to understand why. A human connected to the Elorian throne had access to influence beyond anything most soldiers could imagine. But Ethan had never measured success by how many people knew his name. "You realize most people would consider this the opportunity of a lifetime," an Earth diplomat told him. Ethan looked through the station window at the distant stars. "Maybe." He paused. "But not every opportunity is something you should accept." The answer was simple. It always had been. Years after their first meeting, Seraphina still found herself surprised by the way Ethan saw the universe. He never believed he had saved an empire. He never believed he had changed history. "You always make things smaller than they are," she once told him. Ethan looked confused. "Smaller?" "Yes." She smiled slightly. "You call it helping one person. Others call it the beginning of an alliance between civilizations." Ethan considered that. Both can be true. And that was the lesson she carried with her. Great changes did not always begin with great speeches. Sometimes they began with one decision made quietly when nobody was watching. Their relationship was not without challenges. They argued. They disagreed. They approached problems from different perspectives. Seraphina thought in centuries. Ethan thought in moments. She considered consequences across worlds. He considered the person standing directly in front of him. But instead of allowing those differences to separate them, they used them to understand what the other could not see. She taught him that some burdens were too heavy to carry alone. He reminded her that every empire was built from individual lives, not numbers on a report. In the Elorian Historical Archive, the damaged rescue vessel from their first encounter was preserved, not as a monument to a crisis, not as a symbol of war. It remained as a reminder of a choice. A simple choice made by someone who had nothing to gain. Future generations studied the political changes, the technological cooperation, and the diplomatic agreements that followed. But beneath every official record was the same truth. A queen learned that trust was not weakness. A soldier learned that responsibility did not mean carrying every loss alone. Two civilizations learned that being different did not prevent them from building something together. The galaxies searched for centuries for the secret behind humanity's strange influence among the stars. Some expected the answer to be technology. Others expected strength. Others expected ambition. They were all wrong. Humanity's greatest achievement was never reaching farther than other species. It was choosing kindness even when there was no reward waiting. Because in the endless silence between worlds, one truth remained. The human soldier did not change the galaxy because he was the most powerful person in it. He changed it because when the universe gave him every reason to walk away, he chose to stay. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this journey among the stars. We hope this story brought you inspiration and emotion. Share your thoughts and favorite moments in the comments below, and subscribe to Gravity and Stardust for more unforgettable cinematic tales from across the galaxy.